It was close to midnight when the storm hit the county hospital harder than anyone expected. Wind rattled the windows, rain pounded the roof, and inside the aging building the lights flickered in protest. Doctors and nurses exchanged nervous glances, hoping the backup systems would hold if the grid failed. But deep in the basement, an old generator sat half forgotten behind locked doors and a pile of outdated supplies. No one knew that tonight it would decide who made it through the night. Riley Hart, just 21, sat in her rusty pickup outside the staff entrance. She had come to deliver a set of replacement valves for her uncle, the hospital's senior maintenance man who had called in sick 2 days ago. She waited in the truck, listening to the storm drum on the roof, debating whether to knock or just leave the parts by the door. Then the lights inside flickered twice before everything went black. At first, she thought she imagined it, but then she saw the faint emergency signs blinking red near the ambulance bay. Something was wrong. Riley's breath fogged up the cold windshield as she watched nurses run back and forth through the glass doors. She could see people inside, moving with flashlights, trying to calm patients in wheelchairs. Her mind raced. She knew the old backup system in that basement. She'd helped her uncle clean it out last winter when they'd replaced a leaking pipe. She could still remember the rows of wires, the hum of the old generator when it worked. But tonight she knew the hum was missing. She grabbed her father's toolbox from the passenger seat, pushed open the creaking truck door, and stepped out into the pouring rain. Her boots sank into the muddy gravel, but she kept walking, pulling her flannel jacket tighter around her shoulders. Inside, the hospital's hallways were ghostly under flickering red exit lights. She moved quickly, avoiding the front desk where staff shouted into dead phones, searching for the stairwell that led to the basement. She found it half open, propped by a yellow mop bucket someone had abandoned. Riley stepped down carefully, her boots squeaking on the concrete steps. In the basement, the air smelled damp and metallic, filled with the faint scent of burnt wires. She found the generator room door unlocked, swung it open, and aimed her small flashlight at the massive old machine that should have been humming but now sat dark and dead. Her breath caught in her throat as she knelt beside it. She popped the main panel open, revealing a mess of wires that looked worse than she expected. Sparks had melted the insulation, and a faint trickle of water dripped from a nearby pipe, landing too close to the machine for comfort. She muttered under her breath and wiped her wet hair out of her face, pushing her sleeves up. In her head, she pictured her dad's hands guiding hers, just like when she was a kid, fixing old farm trucks on weekends. She could almost hear him saying, "Trust your hands, they know what to do." Riley took a deep breath, pulled out a roll of tape, a pair of pliers, and her dad's battered wrench. Upstairs, the chaos continued. Machines beeped helplessly, nurses checked pulse rates by flashlight, and Mr. Green, the night administrator, was on the edge of panic. He barked into a dead phone, his tie loosened, hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. No one knew there was a young woman crouched in the basement, fighting to bring light back to the dark hallways. As she worked, Riley's flashlight flickered dangerously low. She stuck it between her teeth, freeing both hands to twist wires and tighten connections. Each spark made her flinch, but she refused to stop. She was soaked through and shivering, but her eyes stayed locked on the mess of metal and wire that held so many lives in its silence. In that moment, she was more than the mechanic's niece. She was the only hope the hospital had left, and she wasn't leaving until the lights came back on. Riley's fingers were numb by the time she found the last burnt wire that kept the generator from kicking back to life. She could hear thunder booming above, rain lashing the basement windows like a warning drumbeat. She wiped her hands on her jeans, smearing grease across the faded denim. Her dad's old wrench slipped once, nearly busting her knuckles, but she clenched her jaw and tightened the bolt again until it stayed. She felt the vibration shift under her knees, a faint hum trying to return. She knew it was now or never. Behind her, she'd propped her dying flashlight on a box of old cleaning supplies, the weak beam barely lighting the maze of cables and pipes. Riley took a deep breath, closed her eyes for just a second, and remembered her father's voice. "Don't be scared of the noise," Listen to it. It tells you what it needs. She twisted two wires together, sparks crackling just inches from her face, but she didn't flinch this time. She could almost feel her pulse sync with the slow, stuttering thrum of the machine. One more switch, one more fuse. Upstairs, nurses whispered to each other, checking on babies in incubators that were down to emergency batteries. Families waited in dim hallways, clutching loved ones' hands. No one knew who was trying to save them in the dark below. Riley's mind flicked to her mother, home sick with her uncle, who probably didn't even know she was here tonight. If she failed, they'd never forgive her for risking so much alone. But if she didn't try, she knew she'd never forgive herself. She traced the last wire, found the burnt section and spliced it with steady hands. A single drip of water splashed onto her wrist, but she ignored it. She jammed the fuse back into place, exhaled slowly, and reached for the start switch. The old metal lever stuck at first, rusted from years of neglect. She braced her boot against the frame and pulled hard, until it slammed into place with a loud thunk. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the echo of rain and her own ragged breathing. Then, with a deep cough and a roar that made the walls vibrate, the generator came alive. Lights flickered on across the basement, humming louder and steadier each second. Riley staggered back and let out a choked laugh, brushing away tears she hadn't noticed. She wiped her greasy hands on her jacket and grabbed her tools, her boots splashing through puddles on the basement floor as she bolted up the stairs two at a time. When she pushed open the stairwell door, the hospital was bathed in bright, buzzing light again. Monitors beeped back to life. Nurses shouted with relief. Families hugged each other in the hallways. The administrator, Mr. Green, spotted her wiping sweat from her forehead near the emergency exit sign. He stormed toward her at first, ready to yell at whoever broke into the basement, but stopped when he saw the grease on her sleeves and the stubborn calm in her eyes. You did this?" he asked, almost breathless. Riley shrugged, trying to hide her trembling hands. "Someone had to." The man blinked, then grabbed her hand and pumped it so hard she thought he'd break her wrist. Around them, people whispered and pointed, word spreading about the young woman in dirty work boots, who had done what a whole team of engineers hadn't managed in time. By morning, Riley was gone. She slipped back out into the parking lot, climbed into her old truck, and headed home before the dawn could show her tears. The next day, when the local paper wrote about the Blackout hero, they didn't even have her name. But the nurses remembered, the families remembered, and somewhere in her small town, her mother and uncle woke up to the hum of a hospital that was still running, thanks to a young mechanic who refused to leave anyone in the dark.